from a company called Unmanned Safety Institute, where at a high level, I help empower individuals, academic institutions, and commercial organizations around drone and unmanned technology. I've been doing that for a little over 8 years now. I'm actually based in Phoenix as well, and I am grateful for the opportunity to get a chance to moderate our call today. So this will be the first in a series of discussions. I know there's another one coming in person in November. We thank you all for those of you that submitted questions. We thank you for submitting those questions. We did get a chance to read through those, and we're going to present some of those questions in our discussion today. And if we don't happen to get to your question today, please feel free to chat a question to us. And if time does remain at the end of the call, we would like to address those questions. And for any remaining questions that we were unable to answer, we plan to address those in our November meeting. Okay? All right. So listen, thank you again for the opportunity. This is a pretty unique forum, I have to admit. We've got some really interesting folks, so with some really interesting backgrounds on our call and on our panel today. If you don't mind, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go around the panel here and ask them to introduce themselves here really quick. If you don't mind starting, Aman from WISC.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aman Tripathi. I work at a company called WISC. We are going to build this yellow aircraft you see behind me. We have been around for 15 years, and I've been here more than 7, which is a lot if you ask many of people here. What I do is I lead what is called product management and commercialization at WISC. So that has 3 facts to it. Basically, I manage all the product requirements of WISC. So whatever you will see on the website, wherever you see a number such as range, noise, turnaround time, things like that, that's something which is developed by me and managed by me. I also manage our business case, which is how do we raise money to get to service, and post entry into service, how do we think about revenue and financial projections. So the business case aspect. And lastly, I support a lot of the work on commercialization strategy, working across the board with various organizations across the company. Before that was my grad school. I studied operations research for my grad school and mechanical engineering for my undergrad, but I am at best like a recovering engineer. So life takes turns. Anyways, that's me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Michelle, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Hello, everybody. My name is Michelle Duquette. I am here in Maryland. Been working in aviation for the last 35 years. I started out as an aircraft dispatcher, and I did that for about 10 years. And then I shifted over to the FAA's think tank called the MITRE Corporation. And I worked there for the next 24 years, where I did a myriad of different things, whether it was developing R&P procedures or time-based metering. I worked across all of the FAA lines of business, eventually landing in the UAS and advanced air mobility sector. Back in 2010, actually, is when that started. And I ended up leading that portfolio of research for the FAA. And it included anything from certification to traffic flow management to pilot certification to safety risk management calculations for drones and the new powered lift eVTOLs. I've since retired, and I'm now a private consultant, and I am devoting myself to Future Flight Global. So that's what brought me here today, and I'm really happy to talk to you all.
Thank you, Michelle. Ms. Drummond, if you don't mind.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here today. My name is Toni Drummond, and I am the co-founder and managing director of Future Flight Global. We are an aircraft operator for electric aircraft. My history is very, very near and dear to most of you. I'm from the business aviation side of things. So I have been, between 25 and 30 years on the business aviation side of the fence. I actually own a Part 135 air charter company as well. And our company is going to be an agnostic operator of many different kinds of electric aircraft, CTOL, STOL, eVTOL. And we're looking forward to moving to the next generation of aviation here and combining past, present, and future. And my specialty really is global operations, aircraft operations, management, all the usual business aviation management type of career tips. So it's really fun to get into this next sphere of what the future will look like, and happy to be here with you all today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Tony. Was Lewis able to join us from Eve Air Mobility?
Yes, absolutely.
How you doing, sir? If you don't mind introducing yourself to the group here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick, for having me. Pleasure to be here with you guys. Louis Perrin. I'm the head of business development for Eve Air Mobility. Started my career in 2011 as a mechanical and aerospace systems engineer. So started with landing gear and brakes, imagine that. And then after a few years moving to different positions within the Embraer group, I spent some time here in the United States, then in Germany, and then now leading all commercial activities in the Americas for Eve Air Mobility. So it's a pleasure to be here with you guys. I'm looking forward to the points that we'll address today in the panel, and it's a privilege to be alongside this distinct group of panelists.
Thank you. Thank you, Lewis. All right, I'm going to get us started here. So, I mean, yeah, just to kind of echo what the group is saying here, what an exciting future we have. You know, people jokingly say, you know, that I talk to out in the public, it's a bit of the Jetsons era, right? I mean, you think about drone deliveries and the things that drone and unmanned aircraft are doing today. And then in our discussion today is going to be, you know, advanced air mobility and what the future is going to bring for us. So super exciting times. I think we all feel very fortunate to be a part of this. So again, students, thank you for making time for this discussion. All right, I'm going to lead us off here. So we're going to begin with the AAM space, Advanced Air Mobility. If you don't mind, for each of the panelists, give us a little bit of history and background in terms of the technology and the space, if you would. And Aman, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you. I know you've been in this industry now for a number of years. You mentioned a little bit earlier, about 8 years now. So give us some perspective.
Yeah, so from a historical perspective, like last 15 years have been like the most interesting one when it comes to where we are today. So I kind of look at it as like two distinct eras. So 2010, 2009 to 17 is like one era where a lot of the time was spent on perfecting the technology, seeing if battery-based aircraft, electric aircraft can do the mission which we are planning to do, like around 30 to 50 mile range mission without reserves included. And a lot of the effort was in proving that batteries would work, distributed electric propulsion would work. The aircraft behind me has like 12 propellers, and you'll see that distributed concept for safety and redundancy across the board. But after 2017, there has been a lot more interest. So if you go and look at Google Scholar and find the number of patents or number of research papers, that has exploded significantly, and every year it keeps increasing. So Uber Elevate played a big role in popularizing urban air mobility, advanced air mobility. And nowadays we have more than 400 plus OEMs working through very diverse range of aircraft. So not exactly what we do, but we are more focused on urban air mobility right now. But you have other concepts such as CTOL, STOL, conventional and short takeoff and landing aircraft, which are trying to do longer range. There are alternative propulsion technologies. People are looking at hybrid systems. People are looking at hydrogen. And all of that has been quite interesting to see, like how many OEMs have developed. There has been a lot of ecosystem development on the overall supporting infrastructure. So I'm talking about Vertiport, what we call PSUs, provider of services for UAM, C-tooling providers, surveillance services providers, weather services provider. So a huge ecosystem has grown. And as these things have happened, the regulator has come along. So if you look at the engagement from FAA or EASA in Europe or other jurisdictions across the globe, there is much more momentum as of today than it was, say, like where I started. So quite exciting time, and hopefully an exciting future ahead.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly, things can accelerate these days. Lewis, if you don't mind, it's great to have a legacy OEM like yourself, participating in our call today. If you would give us a little bit of perspective in terms of how you think partnerships between legacy aviation companies like yourselves and AAM players can help drive growth, safety, and scalability around this technology?
Yeah, one great example of the partnerships we had today is Tony and her team with Future Flight Global. So Future Flight Global has the vision of bringing urban air mobility to scale and using the right vehicle for the right mission. So that's, I think, that drive and that vision of this new mentality and new companies coming up with the experience of having decades in the space is one pillar of it. And then on the other side, us as an OEM with the Embraer heritage of 56 years of developing safe and reliable product provides that confidence that you know that the product will deliver and perform according to the safety levels that we need to. So when you step on an Embraer E-Jet flying for a Delta Connection or American Eagle, you will have the same safety levels as when you get on an eVTOL. And that's a tremendous vote of confidence for public acceptance because this technology is new. So having that history and that track record certainly provides that second pillar of the equation. Same with the executive jets that you have today, that Tony had a lot of experience flying. And a lot of them, the Phenom jets, the Praetor jets, offering the same level of safety design criteria as our eVTOL coming to market. So I think those are the two key elements that make a partnership like that such a tremendous potential for the space.
Thank you for that, Louis. Yeah, Tony, if you would, talk about that a little bit, unpack that a little bit in terms of, how you feel advanced air mobility, what it represents to you in terms of complementing the way you operate currently in the airspace.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment very much, and thanks for that, Louis. We basically started FFG, as somebody who comes from this BizAv side of things, I've always had a vision. I've only been in the space for 5 years from on the UAS and AAM side, but I've always had a vision of complementary activity when we talk about aviation. And so running the jet company, I've been able to see so many holes and ways that we could do things better. And I really believe that the technologies we're talking about here when it comes to electric aviation really are going to plug together a lot of the holes we see today. Working with helicopters and working with light jets, there's always the common, concerns with noise and, safety and what have you. And what we're looking at today is taking new technology that's actually going to improve our safety and taking the safety lessons that we've had in the past and combining them. So it's understanding past, present, and future technologies to really get us to a point where we've added something to the aviation recipe that's very robust and very complementary. So I see this as, some people will say there's a competition between helicopters, if you will, and what's going on with the electric side. I do not see that at all. I see it as so complementary. There's space for every type of vehicle right now that we're talking about in our ecosystem. So I'm excited about it, and I can't wait to plug it into lots of different spaces that I see will really start to complement business aviation.
That's wonderful. Michelle, I know you've spent almost a decade now in UAS operations and dealing with complex airspaces and low altitudes. What's your perspective in terms of advanced air mobility and its integration?
Yeah, I've got one word for everybody: interoperability. So having kind of grown up as all of this has started to sprinkle in, having been kind of on the inside with the FAA and being able to see firsthand the infrastructure across the national airspace system and how it serves the various sectors, whether it's a Part 91 or a 135 or a 121 operation. There is different technology that's available that is enabling the safety and efficiency of our national airspace system. And I'm pretty excited about how we have been evolving over this last, it's now 15 years that we have started modernizing the technology not just with the aircraft, but also the systems that the FAA is using in order to be able to process the amount of data that comes from these systems, the numerous applications for waivers and approvals to fly. We are not in an age of being able to hand jam anything anymore. The magnitude, it requires automation, it requires large language models, it requires machine learning. So the FAA is just organically is starting to accelerate its technologies because of these drones and advanced air mobility eVTOL type operations that are coming into the NAS. I think it's fantastic.
That's interesting. Yeah. Another way to kind of negate the risk associated with the technology too, in terms of utilizing those different tools. All right. I'm going to take this a little bit further now. So, one of the questions that we saw a number of times in the survey results was around, piloted, automated, and autonomous flight, right? So when we talk about advanced air mobility. So Tony, if you don't mind, today you're a Part 135 shop in Vegas. If you would give us a little bit of perspective, give the group a little bit of perspective in terms of how some of those existing pilots are preparing for this technology in the future.
So it's interesting. When we talk about the flight departments right now, we talk about business aviation. I feel like that segment of our population has been a little bit slow to pick up on what's going on. If we're looking at the advanced air mobility, the people that I'm running with and on that side of the industry, there's a different acceptance level. Our flight department is excited about it in a lot of different ways. Our pilots are still a little bit skeptical overall about how the integration is going to look. Our flight department is wildly excited about getting ready to operate new types of aircraft and understanding those technologies that come in. And what I want to bring up is that when we talk about it in totality right now, especially from my perspective, because I'm not talking about WISC, like WISC is flying without a pilot. I'm talking about stage one, day one operations with a pilot. It's not going to vary wildly from what we're doing right now. So understanding what that bridge is going to look like in the very beginning is very exciting for people in the flight department. They want to understand how they can transition within the flight department and what type of opportunities are going to be available for them. But how we see ourselves operating in the very beginning is very similar to the way that we operate helicopters and jets with the safety management system, with all of those bells and whistles that keep us very, very safe in the air right now. We're going to be extending those out into the flight department with pilots on board for powered lift. So I see excitement within the flight department. I see a little bit of concern because there's still a lot of unknowns. But as we start to really speak more about it and educate more about it, and the OEMs are we're doing lots of research and we're figuring things out with the FAA, we start to become more comfortable in having conversations and answering the hard questions. So far so good. My flight department's really excited about the shift, and I think a lot of others are also.
Yeah. Amant, if you would, I know WISC is coming to the marketplace without a pilot necessarily in the aircraft. So talk a little bit about that, if you will, in terms of some of the research that you all have done, kind of behind the scenes to ensure its safe integration into the airspace.
No, for sure. So I really appreciate what Tony and Michelle were saying earlier. There is skepticism, obviously, especially when you take out the pilot. And from airspace integration perspective, it's really, really complex challenge. How do you integrate this type of vehicle which do not have an onboard pilot on national airspace, right? So WISC has been around for 15 years. We have done 5 generations of planes. We worked a lot on autonomy through those years. And a few years ago, we put out a document called Concept of Operations, which basically goes into answering this specific question on how do we think we are going to be integrating into national airspace just after the piloted operations. So that is an incredibly complex challenge, as you can imagine, but it's at the same time incredibly detailed systems engineering process. So you take a lot of functions which pilot perform and try to decompose them function by function, find the right place for them, either on board the aircraft or on the ground. Our ground segment is called remote supervision segment, and that's where remote pilot would sit. So how does this differ? So when first piloted aircraft come into the picture, like some of our competitor, There are going to be something called simplified vehicle operations or akin to that. By the way, it's one of the hardest things to get people to agree on what terms mean, so please give me some leeway. But the initial operations, if you look at pilot functions, aviate, navigate, communicate, to keep it high level, initial piloted operations would try to simplify aviate as much as they can. Yeah. So you will not be allowed to operate aircraft beyond the safety envelope it is designed to be. When it comes to WISP, what we are trying to do is make aircraft do the aviate and navigate on its own, and the communication responsibility is offloaded to a person, a guy or a gal, looking at the computer. They do not have flight controls in hand, and they just have point and click authority. So they are doing communication part of the equation. Now, when it comes to off-nominal situations, such as, like, let's say air traffic control wants you to go to a different heading, or you need to change altitudes, or there is some emergency and you need to land, that's where the supervisor is either over the loop or on the loop to be able to guide aircraft towards the necessary off-nominal actions. And as things progress, like far into the future, that's not where WISP is today. We do not want to do any fancy Terminator AI, none of that stuff. But far into the future, one of the key enablers is the airspace integration aspect, which Michelle were talking about, right? We want to have machine-to-machine communication where you are getting end-to-end clearance in one go and eliminating voice communication and allowing people to scale. So yeah, and then there would be concepts such as cooperative corridors where, based on performance of your aircraft, you can try to fit in. It's going to be much more high throughput. So it's a gradual evolution. We want to be right behind the piloted operations, but we want to be predictable and boring as hell. Very predictable, very thin on RMP numbers. You would know, anyone would know where we are at any given of time. The mission intent is very clear, and any deviations are cleared with air traffic control. So we are trying to keep it as safe as possible. And I'm really proud of the fact that we are targeting the famous 10 to the power minus 9 safety level the day we enter into service. That has its own challenges from an engineering point of view, but we want to be sure that it's as safe as the airliners out there today. Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. And Michelle, I'm going to pivot to you. So, I think about UAS technology, right? And how much success, arguably, that technology has had. It adds a tremendous amount of value very quickly, right? It's obviously up in the national airspace. I just did a quick AI search, and 427,000 Part 107, licenses were issued as of December 31st, 2024. So I'm anticipating those numbers are going to continue, at least from based on my experience and what I'm hearing on the streets as well. So give us a little bit of perspective, if you will, from your lens in terms of your background in UAS technology and its integration into their airspace and how it's being utilized, and how that might kind of prepare advanced air mobility and its introduction into our airspace.
That's a great question. And I honestly I'm a big believer that we have been learning by doing right along.
Yeah.
So as we figured out being able to have drones operating in the same airspace at the same time using different service suppliers requires a level of information exchange to what Aman was just actually talking about. We need to have machine to machine at some point in the future. And so we've been taking incremental steps to understand what that actually means. We don't even know what the lexicon is yet. We've got to create the data schema still on, what those data elements are that are meaningful to these new types of operations. We've got a whole history of what's meaningful to legacy aviation and all the acronyms anyone could dream of. And now we're needing to create new ones because it's a little bit of a square peg, round hole. So as these drones are kind of evolving right before our eyes, and people are out there being massively creative with the kinds of missions that they are coming up with for these drones, that the performance envelopes that we thought we had shaped the NAS with that were suffice for aviation are not sufficient any longer. And so we have been redoing the entire safety management system construct to be able to include drones. So what that is doing is that is allowing the FAA to open its aperture and expand how it defines risk and be a bit more holistic on what kind of mitigations would be appropriate in different circumstances, things we never had to think about before. But what that's doing is it's setting the stage for us to be more open-minded as this yet next phase of aviation starts coming in. And I think that we've learned that doing things the hard way, manual, trying to do everything by hand is definitely not scalable, not in the volume that this new technology is coming at us. So being able to instantiate automation in their internal processes. So it's not just the tech on the drones or even the tech out in the NAS or the tech that's coming with the eVTOLs. These guys also have to be able to process faster. They have to be able to, and I won't quite say go with AI quite yet because we're still trying to figure out how to validate those outputs, but they do have to be able to assess massive amounts of data. So there are so many drones out there that are collecting data that are in FAA public-private partnerships today and have been for the last many, many years. And so to be able to collect all that and to be able to normalize it, be able to clean it, be able to fuse it, and curate meaningful intelligence from it is not something that can be done manually anymore. So by design, or perhaps by default, we are accelerating the evolution of the FAA at the same time. So I'll keep going back to that one every time I can, because I think that is one of the critical benefits of this whole next phase of aviation that not a lot of folks are recognizing, but it's absolutely happening. And our rules are starting to illustrate that. We've just recently had the Beyond Visual Line of Sight Notice of Proposed Rulemaking come out. Mm-hmm. So we're now looking at being able to have routine ops that are beyond visual line of sight. Okay, 5 years ago, there was no inclination that we would be able to do that, but here we are. So yeah, I think we have been learning by doing, and we've been kind of mentally opening our aperture to be able to exercise that creativity that we need in order to be able to create the infrastructure, create that machine-to-machine environment of the future, and be able to do that now.
You know, and I think to myself, Michelle, I mean, what's going on today with drone deliveries, you know, and all the data that's going to be captured through that particular use case, because those aircraft are going to be in some very unique situations, delivering food. I mean, it just seems wild to me that one of the things that's really caught the attention of the public around drone and unmanned technology is this idea of having a burrito delivered to your house and to your backyard kind of thing. So that's definitely happening. It's happening here in Phoenix. It's definitely happening in Dallas, Texas kind of thing. And, you know, if you jump on social media, you get on the news, you'll start to hear these companies talking about it, right? Everybody's kind of rushing to market because they want to establish the optics around, hey, I can deliver our product into your backyard and I can do it within 20 minutes to an hour kind of thing. And again, I think about all that data that's going to be captured through that use case and how that's going to continue to prepare the airspace for our future.
Yeah, and what makes your head kind of explode is if you think of the magnitude of all of those drones aggregated across the United States.
Yeah.
And they have to use what? They have to use spectrum. They have to use cellular services. Mm-hmm. They need a pretty significant cybersecurity wrapper, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a whole lot that is underneath what we see, even at the secondary or tertiary levels of processing approvals and waivers and getting the tech to work all the time. There's still a lot underneath that has to happen in order for us to safely enable these operations at scale. These ones and twos with the pilot programs, that's us learning by doing. That's the FAA learning by doing. That's our national security forces learning by doing, because you have to know that they're watching every second of this, because it's a vulnerability that we're facing.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Scary and exciting.
Yes.
Isn't it? Yep. Louis, if you don't mind, so a company like yourself, so how are you all preparing, your teams and the possible influx, if you will, of new pilots that would be needed to power these types of aircrafts? Are you guys positioning and posturing around that today?
Yeah, the pilot conundrum, right? We are starting with the piloted aircraft. Aman and the WIS team going for the uncrewed, and then slowly going towards, remote, more moving into a flight manager position. But for the pilot on board, there's an interesting journey today that the pilot has to go through. So you get your private pilot's license, and then you get your commercial pilot's license, and then you're at 300 hours or so. And then the requirements for you to be an airline transport pilot are 1,500 hours. So you have this gap between 300 and 1,500 hours that people have come up with solutions for, good or bad. You can question it. We can debate it. If flying hot air balloons, counting for flight hours towards 1,500 hours, is that good? Flying insurance banners in Daytona Beach on this side of the Embry-Riddle campus, is that good for forming good pilots? Debatable. Now, if you look at an eVTOL, you can have that pilot with 300, 400 hours, and you can put that pilot in a productive business in an innovative space to build those hours. And that pilot is executing procedures, is getting in and out of Bravo airspace. So the proficiency that you can expect from a pilot that's executing all of that 12 times a day, 15 times a day, is arguably producing much more proficient pilots than the solutions that we have in place today. So the idea for the eVTOLs is to come in to aid the pilot crisis and the pilot development funnel, not in detriment of it to compete for it, but rather to provide a productive solution to build and develop those pilots through the funnel.
Thank you for that, Louis. Interesting perspective. Thank you for that. All right, I'm going to pivot our conversation here a little bit. Okay, we're going to start to talk a little bit about regulation and operations. Tony, if you don't mind, or actually, Michelle, if you don't mind, let's kick off with you. What type of regulations will you be using to operate eVTOL and powered lift aircraft? What are you anticipating? What's being done to ensure the safety?
So, so we all know what Part 135 is, right? Part 135 is like that middle layer between 121, very strict, and 91 private pilot, not as strict. And basically that's where Tony lives. It's that business aviation, corporate world, that's commercial. That's not quite the 121 passenger carrying. And that's a great part of the Federal Aviation Regulations. You can do a lot within 135. I think we are still going to be following 135 regulations with these eVTOLs. However, as I said earlier, the FAA has been learning by doing. So we've been recognizing, I say we because, I'm still not quite in the right vernacular of having retired. The FAA has been being very deliberate about the fact that these eVTOLs have performance envelopes that are different. So they've developed a powered lift rule that is giving us that opportunity to kind of mix it up and have a little bit of a hybrid so that you can have the best of both worlds. If you're going to be taking off vertically, then it allows you to use helicopter minimums, which is very cool because once you transition to horizontal flight, you can go back to regular aircraft regulations minimums. So they are, their aperture has opened up. Their creativity has led them to think outside the box. Now, along with that, come the training requirements that are now going to need to be different, because it's not just one or the other. It's a mix of both. And that transition is not an easy transition. That also takes very deliberate training curriculum, so that those performance envelopes, as they transition, are built into the standard operating procedures, all the tactics, techniques, and procedures that need to be built. And then folks have to train to them. We know that our current day pilots, and those of you that have any level of pilot's license, you've got to take a written and a practical. And that same thing needs to apply here. But those practicals need to be in that transitional type of platform. You can't just do a helicopter and then go over here and just do a fixed wing. You're going to have to be in this type of platform, and that's where your practical hours will need to be done in. I think that the regulatory environment is a little bit further ahead with eVTOLs than we were with drones, 15 years ago.
And maybe drones has a little bit to do with that, of course, right? In terms
Absolutely.
of, yeah. Tony, if you don't mind, speak a little bit about how you anticipate these electric aircraft being incorporated into what you do from a day-to-day perspective. How do you expect it to complement your operations?
You're on mute, hon.
Thanks for that. I like what Michelle was saying, leaning into a lot of the differences that we're going to see there, but I tend to look a lot more into the similarities that we have. Again, leaning into somebody who runs a flight operation, our North Star is safety all the way. So I am very excited to see these aircraft come in and complement some of our current use cases. I'm going to use the medical use case right now. It's something that a lot of us in 135 world do. We do organ transfers, we do medevac. And when we think about adding the eVTOL into that and what kind of extension that gives us, even when we're just talking about moving organs and that type of thing, it really does change the envelope of operation for me as a 135 operator. As Michelle said, I plan on operating these aircraft under 135. There's a couple of caveats if we're going to be selling by the seat and what have you, if we were running under strict 135 operations. We don't see a problem applying those current operational limitations, if there are, to what we're going to be doing with eVTOL. I love the idea of knowing that we have different, and we do this right now. We have helicopters in the fleet, we have jets in the fleet, and we use them to complement one another on missions. I've spent many of my years taking PC-12s and putting them on shuttle missions that then go ahead and connect to jets. So when you think about changing the mobility and the way that we mobilize as a community and using multi-mobility, different types of connectivity to rail and what have you, we start thinking about really opening this up. So for me, the sky really is the limit, because I'm thinking about all the different connective tissues and where we can plug some of these aircraft in. And operationally, none of it scares me at all. I feel that we have enough behind the technology, and we have enough experience and research going into this that we will be able to make sure that this is done safely and effectively. And we're not stretching, day one, we're not stretching too far from what we see now operationally.
Yeah, interesting. I think about the airspace, and in some ways, maybe some folks in the front room would feel a little bit differently, but in a lot of ways, it feels like a little bit of white space. Like it's just all this green field, right? I mean, obviously you've got aircraft operating at a very high altitude, but there's a lot of space below it that's not being utilized, kind of thing. And 5-10 years from now, that'll look extremely different. But nowadays being a little bit reflective about what we see up there. So, Louis, if you don't mind, so do you see a big shift in the way powered aircraft will operate?
Yeah, so Michelle kind of gave us an overview of how the SFAR is characterizing powered lift, right? So the FAA came out last October, special federal aviation regulation characterizing operations and pilot training for powered lift aircraft, which is to say all eVTOLs will be featured under that category. And those guidelines are pretty robust. They allow you to use helicopter energy reserves if you can land vertically at any point. But they also allow you to use fixed wing reserves if you are looking for CTOL operations, for example, in your flying wingborne. So I think the FAA did a good job of providing that robustness. And there are still pathways. If you want to propose something different, they're willing and open to listen to it. So we are very happy with the way the administration has laid out the basic rules in the ASFAR. And I think the big difference is we'll be seeing once these vehicles start being in operation. And, we deliver a few to Tony, and she starts flying it all over the country and internationally. And I think that it's going to be a major success because these rules are very robust, and they will evolve over time with the learning. So yes, there are some distinctions because you're coupling fixed wing flight with vertical lift, but I think the framework is there to ensure safe and reliable operations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Aman, talk a little bit about urban air mobility. I find this to be very interesting. I think about the Olympics are coming to LA in a couple of years. The World Cup is coming to Dallas, Texas, and both those cities, significant traffic congestion issues, right? So if you would talk a little bit about urban air mobility and what role do you see it playing, not only in the city, but out in the country as well and regionally.
Yeah. No, but before I go there, by the way, there is some really awesome research paper on the problem you mentioned, Nick. So you said there's a lot of airspace, and NASA noticed that too, and they have found so much data which you guys were talking about below 5,000 feet, and they are trying to design a lot of corridors where eVTOLs from Louis and ourselves and Tony can fly them. So that's really good research, which I highly recommend.
It feels a little bit like a big land grab, doesn't it? They know it's coming, so people are looking to secure their space, looking to secure their domain.
No, it will go through proper making process, and it will be democratizing. I'm sure of that. So let's talk about both of those separately, like urban air mobility and then more on the rural side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So urban air mobility, next few years will be interesting, as you said, like Olympics, World Cup, exciting time. So there are 4 things people need to get over, to get to proper scale, right? From an urban air mobility perspective, we need to get through certification. You guys know all about that, type, production, operational, what Tony was talking about earlier, part 135. Then the other aspect is business model. So for an eVTOL, the 5 major costs are, labor, landing fee, aircraft cost, maintenance cost, batteries. Labor, aircraft, maintenance, batteries, landing fees. And we need to come down the cost curve because the third thing which we need to be very careful about is how do passengers interact with our products, right? You can do a lot of simulation, lot of user research, and it cannot turn out the way you want it to be. On the other hand, based on what we have seen by Waymo over the past couple of years, nobody predicted the number of riders they are doing on a monthly, weekly basis. So, and lastly, what Michelle was saying, availability of infrastructure from vertiport side and airspace side would be very key. So those are the 4 things we need to get over. And I think there are some really, really awesome opportunities in each of those. That's why it's quite fun. So that's what the urban air mobility side, certification, business model, how consumers find it, and lastly, availability of infrastructure. When it comes to other use cases, I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of use cases very early into the game. In rural areas, in different less populated areas. Like if you look at just the drone example from Zipline or Wing or any of these countries, right? Zipline's problem solving for their electric takeoff, vertical takeoff and landing was let's throw the plane really fast in there and see how it goes. Turned out really well. It was a rural area. So I wouldn't be surprised if the thing starts there. But then, especially since we have students on the line, I want to bring something very important for them onto the picture. there is a really close relationship between your unit economics and the aircraft you build. So earlier in the call, I mentioned that there are over 400 OEMs, right? All are going for different type of markets, C-tall, S-tall, and you can cut it by range. Because if you're trying to build a cargo-based plane, you might want to have different characteristics, for example, for noise, than what you were trying to do with an eVTOL, with an urban area. Economics work very differently. Tony mentioned medical use case. It's going to be a big part in rural communities. But again, your unit economics and your aircraft configuration are incredibly linked. That's why you see such a big diversity. So that would be my take on it. Like, you can cut the other use cases by range and how closely associated economics and aircraft configuration are. And that's why there's so much diversity.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the future brings. So, Aman, you mentioned it. We're surrounded by students. Again, thank you so much, you all, for making the time, making the commitment for this conversation. I hope you're getting something out of it. Again, keep in mind, there'll be another chance come November, so more details on that to come. I'm being a little bit mindful of the time. We're down to about, do we have 15 more minutes, 14 more minutes, Tony? Is that right? We have till the top of the hour? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to pivot us a little bit again. So again, being surrounded by students, you all are interested. Like, how's this technology going to impact my future, right? What kind of opportunities are there around this technology? So I'm going to go to my panel here. If you would describe, what you're anticipating for the future in terms of opportunities that could exist for these students. Lewis, if you don't mind, I'll start with you.
We'll maybe do like more of a lightning round then, considering the timing. I think that objectively, I just hope that it provides yet another avenue and different types of operations for you to get into electrical aviation or aviation in general. So maybe you want to fly eVTOLs and come home to your family every night, which is an option that not all pilots have. So if you're flying locally, just in an urban area, that provides you with that opportunity. So hopefully it adds to the pie. It adds to the options that people have in aviation.
Yeah, that's great. And I think Tony was kind of reinforcing that a little bit earlier in terms of how she sees the technology complementing what she's doing today, right? So, yeah. Michelle, if you don't mind, from a UAS perspective.
So I think that we are seeing an opportunity for everybody and their mother to get involved in aviation now. No matter what your degree, what your passion is, there is likely a drone module that augments that degree, whatever that passion is. I don't care if you want to be a lawyer or an archaeologist or, whatever it is, a police officer. There is a drone element that people now are creating, that they're figuring out what the benefits are, whether it's a safety case or it's an efficiency or it's an economic, it's health, it's human factors. There's a number of reasons why they're bringing drones into these areas. So no matter what you're interested in, there's probably a drone element to that. And I'll tell you guys that makes you very, very attractive. When we talk about developing the workforce of the future, we don't want you to give up what you were initially passionate about. We still want you to do that. And we want you to be thinking about how this new technology is going to augment and supplement what it is you want to do. We know that drones are characteristically 55 pounds or less for right now, but going forward, it's going to be a very fuzzy line. As these drones get bigger, they go higher, they go faster, and they're doing more things. That, my friends, falls into the advanced air mobility sector.
And I'm going to echo that as well. So just to remind you all, look, I've spent the last 8 years or so trying to help empower individuals, academic institutions ranging from middle schools, high schools, post-secondary institutions, and commercial organizations, specifically around drone and unmanned technology. I was just at the commercial UAV conference, 3 or 4 weeks ago in Las Vegas. I've been attending that conference again for the last 8 years. It's been absolutely interesting to see how the technology continues to evolve. And to Michelle's point, Even for us, as we're looking to certify individuals for different commercial organizations, they're looking for all different types of skill sets, right? I think a lot of people kind of get caught up on the idea of flying the aircraft, but it's really much more than that. Someone's got to maintain that aircraft, right? Somebody's got to maintain the integrity of that aircraft. So from a UAS perspective, arguably the maintenance of aircraft has been a little bit ignored. Probably because of the platform you used to be able to buy, pretty easily, pretty inexpensively kind of thing. But those dynamics are changing. And to Michelle's point, you could see behind me, the aircraft are just getting, more and more complex, and they're going to be carrying a very heavy piece of equipment, sensors or cameras. And it's absolutely critical that you negate the risk associated with that technology, because if it falls out of the sky, nothing else matters, right? It's going to be it's bad for everyone. It's bad for the industry. It's bad for the brand kind of thing. So I would echo those thoughts in terms of the opportunity that exists around this. Okay. Aman, if you don't mind.
No, I think like some of the panelists have said it really, really well. Luis earlier talked about the gap between the two level of qualification for pilots, right? So I found a research or a forecast paper from AAM from 2023. They project that the number of commercial like ATP pilots would go from 160K to 180K over a duration of 15 years. So only 20,000 more pilots over a 15-year period they're projecting at ATP. So that's why a lot of the work which Luis was mentioning earlier, which Michelle mentioned, Tony mentioned, is really important, because there is a lot of new opportunities emerging in this space, be it piloted operations. Then I really want to echo what you mentioned, Nick. Like maintenance is like the less focused area, the middle child, if you will, of this, but they keep us up quite up at night. There is a lot of effort which needs to be put into how do we maintain these aircraft, enable safety on a day-to-day basis. For people like Whisk, we are enabling a different type of roles, like what we call multi-vehicle supervisor. That's a remote pilot. It manages more than one aircraft at a given time. We have roles such as fleet manager, so like a dispatcher type role at an airline, remote hospitality manager, like passengers can call anyone during the flight and talk to them. Supporting industries such as vertiports, PSUs, C2 links. There are a lot of opportunities in this area. So I'll keep the options open, explore a lot. And there's no one set of things which we need to do, but there's a lot of opportunities right now.
And I'm going to chat a report out real quick. Tony, if you don't mind maybe commenting on that as well, but just as an FYI, I'm going to chat a report out to the group here. So this report was released back in May of 2025 to the Department of Labor. It's an ONET report. I'm hitting send right now. And, when you get a chance, read through it, but they identified 50 plus tasks utilizing drone and unmanned technology that they've now added to the ONET database. So that ought to also give you a little bit of a sense in terms of some of the opportunities that exist around the technology. Okay. Tony, if you don't mind.
Yes, I'll be quick. I think no matter what you're doing, we're talking to the Business Aviation Networking Club today. That's part of, the person that Cody and his team that planned this. No matter what you're doing in business aviation, there's a direct connection to the tech side of what we're talking about. If you're doing maintenance, you might be looking at cybersecurity more. There might be that type of battery and electric technician. That might be your specialty. There's lots of specialties that are going to come out of this very, very early on that you guys need to be paying attention to and gals, because at the end, like ops control, what does that look? Data analytics, you're going to do system integrations. You're going to have different kinds of roles, I believe, that are going to be really, really necessary in order for somebody like me to run my business. I'm going to need somebody like you to come in and say, I understand past, present, and future. Sign me out, boss. And I'm going to say, yay, we have exactly what we need. So pay attention to the tech overlays and minors, if you will, that whether that's UAS or cybersecurity or whatever it might be, that overlap here, because those are going to be the ticket to making yourself a specialist in this field. And I'm happy to go through that further in the next November 5th in person that we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit deeper dive into careers.
Thank you for that, Tony. All right, again, just being a little bit mindful of time. So we're down to 6 minutes here. So if you happen to have any questions that we haven't had a chance to address, chat it real quick, if you will. We'll see if we can get to it. If we can't, we'll hold it until we get a chance to reconnect again in November. Okay. All right. So as a way to wrap up here, folks, so I'm going to go to each one of the panelists. If you would provide the group, one piece of advice, if you will, for them as they look to the future and they try to continue to position and posture themselves for the future and the opportunity that this technology represents for them. And I'll start with you, Tony, if you don't mind.
You unmute again.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry. I was reading the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as a kind of a quick takeaway here as we draw our conversation to a conclusion, what's one piece of advice if you will, that you would give these students as they continue to try to position and posture themselves?
The piece of advice I would give the students is exactly what I just brought up before. Pay attention to the tech that's coming in. Pay attention to the tech that's coming in. That's what I can tell you. There's going to be so much overlap. Don't be afraid of it. Remember, a lot of what's going on already. You're going to have those expertise from what you're bringing in. And there's definitely going to be a 100% use for all that extra knowledge that you're taking in. So pay attention, reach out, ask for any questions you need answered. There's a ton of us here that are willing to embrace you and take you in.
Yvonne, if you don't mind, please. What's your one piece of advice for the group?
It's funny, a few years ago, I was just asking that, that's how you know you are getting old. So I would say just keep exploring whatever you are interested in. There are so many opportunities from engineering to operations to production system to commercial to partnership to certification to cybersecurity, data science. People are very diverse. They have very different interests. I'd encourage you to keep exploring and see what you like and let it be the thing.
And I would encourage the group to keep an eye on these conferences. I mentioned the CUAV conference that I attended in Vegas not long ago. I think that was a couple of weeks away. But you'll notice that some of these conferences, they may be free for students to attend kind of thing. And I would encourage you to go to those conferences and walk that exhibit floor. Start to network with some of those different folks. Ask questions. Get to know what it is that they're doing from a technology perspective. And you may run into something that you never even thought of before, right? So, Louis, if you don't mind. What's your one piece of advice, sir? You have us on mute.
It stems to some degree to what Tony and Aman alluded to, which is stay curious. We're going through the electrification of propulsion systems and distributed propulsion, which from a technology perspective is the biggest breakthrough since the jet age. So we're seeing the inception of something that's going to revolutionize a lot of things. And if you stay curious and keep getting more involved, it's going to position you in a totally different way compared to the others. So staying curious will certainly help getting ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, be curious. Don't be afraid. Michelle, I'm going to come to you to draw us to a conclusion. But before I do that, I see the chat here from Henry. And I believe someone at the very beginning of the call was wanted to give Henry an opportunity here to say a few words. So if you would, Henry. You may have us on mute.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Stanley. I'm the Education and Innovation Officer at the Advanced Air Mobility Institute, and I will be adding my email in the chat. My job within the Institute right now is to establish new relationships within the American Southwest and to work on those MOUs that are about bringing the education programs and resources to young people, similar to what this is doing. So if you'd like to reach out to me so we can get together and work on something like that with the Advanced Air Mobility Institute, feel free. And thank you for this.
You're very welcome. Thank you for those words. And we absolutely would welcome that opportunity. Again, a big part of what I do is try to empower young people around this technology. I jokingly tell folks, look, a big part of what I do is just public awareness. You'd be shocked. I go out into the public and I have speaking engagements. And most folks that are sitting in the room don't even realize that you can be commercially licensed to fly a drone as young as 16 years old. Like, they don't realize that. And then when that information comes into their mind, it just opens up their eyes in terms of the opportunity that exists around it. And again, I continue to promote this idea of teaching the responsible use of drone and unmanned technology in an academic environment as early as you can, because the kids are getting it for Christmas. They're getting it for their birthday, right? And they don't know any better, and they're launching it right by the Air Force Base or right by a hospital that's got a helipad on it. So we'd certainly welcome that. I would certainly welcome that opportunity, Henry. So more to come on that. Okay. Michelle, if you don't mind wrapping us up here, what's your one piece of advice for the students in the room for us today?
Well, I'm going to tell you that we're at time, and so I'm going to suggest that you all just keep coming to these whenever they're offered, because you're going to find something eventually that's going to spark something in you that's going to take you down only your path. And it doesn't have to be like everybody else's, because like we were saying earlier, this technology is touching everything everywhere. So just stay plugged in. Don't allow yourself to get on the outside.
I agree. I've got a very interesting story of my own in terms of how I ended up here in the environment that I work in, and same thing, right? Just curiosity and just kept pushing. And here I am surrounded by this amazing technology and frankly, this amazing panel. So thank you everyone for your time. We look forward to seeing some of you, if not all of you, again in November. So more to come, but thank you so much again for making time for the conversation. And I hope you all found it to be informative. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Time. I look forward to seeing you.
You too.